My daughter stormed into the house and shouted, "Dad, why did you lock the credit accounts? My husband is furious." I looked at Emily, standing there so fiercely defending the man who had been quietly stealing from me, and felt a cold knot form in my chest. She didn't ask why I protected my finances or whether there'd been suspicious activity. She asked why I had locked the accounts as if my money had somehow become their shared property. She couldn't see the trap she'd fallen into, how Kevin had twisted her love into a weapon and made her his shield. But I saw it all, and I would be the one to unmask him. The credit alert pierced through the quiet of my Wednesday afternoon like a fire alarm, 2:45 on April 10th, to be exact. It was in my home office reviewing quarterly reports for my investment portfolio when my phone buzzed with a message that would unravel everything. Urgent, new account activity detected. At 70, my financial habits were steady and unchanging. I used 2 credit cards, paid them off monthly, and preferred cash for small purchases. I hadn't opened a new line of credit in over 5 years. This alert made no sense. I tapped the notification and felt a surge of adrenaline as the details loaded. My blood ran cold. 3 new accounts, all opened within the last 6 months using my personal information, were all carrying massive balances. A Capital One Venture X card with a balance of $41,500. An American Express Gold card showing $38,200. A Bank of America Premium Rewards card loaded with $30,300. It totaled a staggering $110,000 in fraudulent debt, all attached to my name. The initial shock lasted for maybe 30 seconds. Then, the instincts honed over 42 years of running Harrison Engineering Solutions took over. I grabbed my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard as I pulled up my comprehensive credit monitoring service. The full picture emerged like a meticulously documented crime scene. There were charges for lavish dinners at restaurants in downtown Denver I'd never heard of. Purchases from high-end electronics stores for gadgets I'd never bought. A series of cash advances I'd certainly never taken. But the mailing address on each account made my heart stop. Every single statement was being sent to 4582 Aspen Lane. Emily's house. My daughter's address. Emily was a dedicated registered nurse at Denver General Hospital. She was responsible, honest, and went to church with me nearly every Sunday. But her husband, Kevin Mitchell, was a different story. He was a smooth talker, forever pitching the latest investment idea, crypto, a multi-level marketing surefire play, something new every month. I never trusted his easy smile or the way his eyes seemed to calculate the value of everything, and everyone, in the room. I didn't waste a single moment on denial. My first call was to Capital One's fraud department. "I need to report identity theft and close this account immediately," I stated, my voice firm and level. The representative on the other end was efficient. The account was frozen. The cards were cancelled. An investigation was initiated. American Express was next. I repeated the procedure, and got the same result. Bank of America followed suit. By 4:30 p.m., all 3 fraudulent accounts were locked down. But I wasn't finished. I systematically logged into every legitimate account I possessed, banking, investments, credit monitoring, even my email, and changed every password to a long, randomized string. If someone had my information, they were about to find themselves completely locked out of my life. My next call was to my attorney, David Chin. "David, I need you to document this. I have 3 cases of identity theft, and all the evidence points directly to my daughter's address. I want everything on record." "Jesus, Bill." David's voice was grim. "You think Emily's involved?" "I don't know what to think yet," I admitted, the words tasting like ash. "But I know how to protect myself while I figure it out." By 5 o'clock, my financial fortress was secure. Every account was shielded, every potential vulnerability sealed. I leaned back in my leather office chair and allowed myself one brief moment of grim satisfaction. Whoever had been siphoning money from me was about to discover that William Harrison didn't build a multi-million-dollar engineering firm by being anyone's victim. My phone sat silent on the mahogany desk. No frantic calls yet, but I knew they'd come. The moment Kevin tried to use one of those cards for his next expensive toy or extravagant meal, he would run into a digital brick wall. I sat there, watching the sun dip below the mountains, and wondered how long it would take them to notice. The quiet of Thursday morning shattered at precisely 9 a.m. when my front door flew open without warning. I was in the kitchen, savoring a cup of black coffee, when Emily burst in using the emergency key I'd given her years ago. This wasn't an emergency. It was an act of war. "Dad, why did you lock the accounts? Kevin is furious." Her voice, laced with an anger I hadn't heard since she was a rebellious teenager, echoed through the quiet house. But Emily wasn't 16 anymore. She was 36, a respected nurse, yet somehow convinced my finances were communal property. She stood in the doorway, still in the blue scrubs from her night shift, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun and her brown eyes, so much like her mother's, blazing with indignation. The resemblance to my late wife, Claire, was striking, except Claire would never have defended a thief. "Good morning, honey," I said, my voice deliberately calm. "Which accounts do you mean?" "Don't play games with me, Dad," she snapped. "Kevin tried to buy groceries this morning and the card was declined. He went online and everything was locked." "What did you do?" The pieces clicked into place. Kevin had sent her. He was too much of a coward to face me himself, so he had weaponized my daughter's loyalty against me. It was a classic manipulation tactic, and Emily, blinded by her affection for him, had walked right into it. "I secured my accounts after discovering some significant irregularities," I explained evenly. "What I want to know is why your husband believes he should have access to any of my credit cards." Emily's anger faltered for a second, replaced by a flicker of confusion. We said we could use them for emergencies. Remember when our car needed repairs 2 years ago? One emergency 18 months ago does not grant permanent access to my finances, Emily." "But Dad, we're family." "Kevin has been helping you with your investments, managing some of your online accounts. He's trying to build our future," she insisted. My blood ran cold. Managing my online accounts? I had never agreed to that. "What online accounts has Kevin been managing for me?" "I don't know the details," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "He handles all our financial stuff. He's great with computers and all that investment talk. He told me you'd asked for his help because new tech confuses your generation." The insult stung far less than the chilling realization that my daughter had been so thoroughly and completely manipulated. Kevin had somehow convinced her that his theft was a form of helpful assistance. "Emily, sit down. We need to talk." "I don't want to sit down. I want you to unlock the accounts so Kevin will stop being so angry. He's been pacing around the house all morning, saying you don't trust us, that you're treating us like criminals. Maybe that's because someone has been acting like a criminal," I said, my voice hardening. "How can you say that about Kevin? He loves me. He loves our family. He is working so hard to give us a good life." I walked back to my office and retrieved the credit reports I had printed out the day before. I spread them across the oak of my kitchen table. "Emily, look at these. These are credit reports for 3 accounts opened in my name, without my knowledge or consent." She approached the table reluctantly, her anger slowly giving way to bewilderment as she scanned the documents. Capital One Venture X, American Express Gold, Bank of America Premium. "I don't understand. What are these?" "These are credit cards someone opened using my personal information," I said, pointing to the line items. "Someone who had access to my social security number, my date of birth, and my detailed financial history. Someone who knew how to forge my signature and, most importantly, where to send the bills so I wouldn't see them. But I've never seen these statements. Our mail goes to AP, box." She stopped mid-sentence, her face draining of all color. "Emily," I asked gently, "when was the last time you personally checked the mail delivered to your house?" "Kevin always, he gets the mail. He says it's mostly junk anyway. He handles all the bills. Silence stretched between us. I watched as the architecture of my daughter's world began to crumble. She was realizing, in real time, that she had no idea what mail was coming to her own home, what accounts existed in the shadows, or what her husband was truly doing behind her back. "Dad," she whispered, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. "I don't know anything about these accounts." The weight of Emily's realization was still hanging in the air when the sound of Kevin's Audi roaring into my driveway shattered the quiet. My daughter's face shifted from dawning horror to panicked loyalty. "He's here," she whispered, as if his arrival could somehow make the fraudulent reports on the table disappear. Kevin burst through the door, radiating a manufactured confidence. All swagger, all feigned authority. "Bill, what's all this about locked accounts?" Emily called me, completely distraught. She said there's been some kind of misunderstanding. I gestured to the papers spread across my table. "There's no misunderstanding, Kevin. There's $110,000 in fraudulent debt, taken out using my information and mailed to your house." Kevin's eyes flicked to the documents. For a split second, I saw it, not surprise, but a flash of cold recognition. He recovered with the speed of a seasoned professional. "This is terrible." "It's identity theft, Bill. Someone is targeting our family. We need to call the police immediately." He placed a proprietary hand on Emily's shoulder. "Honey, this exact thing happened to my cousin out in California. These criminals are incredibly sophisticated. Your cousin didn't have the statements sent to his house," I said quietly. "They used our address to avoid detection." He shot back, his voice smooth and practiced. It was an almost believable performance. "If they had sent the bills to you, you would have caught on months ago. By using our address, they kept you completely in the dark." He'd rehearsed for this day, but he was conning a man who'd spent decades spotting cheats in the field. "It's an interesting theory," I conceded. "But it doesn't explain how a stranger got my social security number, my mother's maiden name, and my detailed banking history. That isn't information you find on the internet." Emily looked between us, desperate for an explanation that didn't point to her husband. "Maybe someone hacked your computer, Dad. Or went through your mail." Kevin nodded enthusiastically, seizing the lifeline she'd thrown him. "Exactly. These thieves are professionals. They could have watched your house, gone through your trash, intercepted your mail. We should file police reports right away." "Already done," I said, watching his expression falter. "I filed the reports yesterday. Froze the accounts. Changed all my passwords. And I contacted my attorney." "Your attorney?" Kevin's voice rose an octave. "Bill, why would you involve lawyers before talking to us? We're family. We want to help you." The guilt trip. It was emotional manipulation designed to make me feel unreasonable for protecting myself from a predator. "I involved my attorney because someone with intimate access to my personal information has been systematically defrauding me for months," I said, my gaze locked on his. "Someone who knew how to forge my signature and where to send the evidence so I wouldn't see it." "Are you accusing us?" Kevin's tone became aggressive. "That's a very serious allegation, Bill. Emily and I have done nothing but help you since Claire passed away. We've supported you, treated you like family." "You are family, Kevin," I said. "That makes this betrayal worse." Emily stepped between us, tears streaming down her face. "Stop it, both of you. Dad, Kevin would never steal from you. And Kevin, my father isn't some senile old man. Somebody needs to explain what's really happening here." Silence held. Kevin's mask was slipping, his friendly, concerned demeanor being replaced by something harder, colder. "I think," Kevin said slowly, his voice dripping with condescension, "that your grief and isolation are making you paranoid, Bill. Maybe it's time we consider the possibility that you're not thinking clearly anymore." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. He was suggesting mental incompetence, laying the groundwork for a different kind of manipulation, a different kind of theft. "You're right, Kevin. Perhaps I'm not thinking clearly," I said calmly. Which is why I'm hiring professionals to do the thinking for me. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number from memory. Miguel, it's Bill Harrison. I need your best investigator on a case for me. Today. Kevin's face went white. Bill, that's completely unnecessary. We can work this out as a family. We tried that approach. It didn't work. I looked directly into Kevin's eyes as Miguel confirmed an investigator would be in touch. I'm going to find out exactly who you really are, Kevin. Friday morning arrived with the sharp clarity that follows a hard decision. One day had passed since I'd hired Miguel's top investigator, and my phone buzzed at exactly 10 o'clock with the call I'd been expecting. Mr. Harrison, this is Frank Miller, retired Denver PD. Miguel asked me to handle your case personally. Frank's voice was gravelly, carrying the weight of 30 years spent investigating financial crimes. If anyone could uncover Kevin's real story, it was him. What did you find, Frank? More than you probably wanted to know, he said. Can you meet me at my office in an hour? This is a conversation we need to have face to face. An hour later, I sat across from Frank in his Spartan downtown office, watching as he spread photographs and official documents across his desk like pieces of a dark and twisted puzzle. Your son-in-law is a professional, Mr. Harrison. This isn't his first time. Frank slid a photograph toward me. It showed an elderly woman with kind eyes and silver hair, sitting in a living room that looked remarkably similar to my own. Helen Peterson, 80 years old. She's a widow, lives over in Cherry Creek, about 3 miles from your house. Ring any bells? I studied the photo. I've never seen her before in my life. But Kevin Mitchell has, Frank said, pulling out a thick file. 5 years ago, Mrs. Peterson's daughter, Sarah, married a charming young financial advisor she met at a charity event. Guess who? My stomach dropped. Kevin. He was using a different last name back then. Kevin Anderson. But it was the same M.O. He targeted a lonely widow through her daughter, gained her trust, got access to her personal information, and opened multiple credit accounts in her name. By the time Mrs. Peterson figured out what was happening, he'd stolen over $60,000. What happened to the daughter? I asked, a knot tightening in my gut. Sarah divorced him when the truth finally came out, but not before he'd completely destroyed her relationship with her mother. Helen spent months in legal hell trying to prove the fraud. Kevin vanished before charges could be filed. Frank spread out more documents, bank statements, credit applications, forged signatures. The pattern matched mine, down to the smallest detail. The types of accounts, the timing, the way he intercepted the mail. It's the same playbook, Bill. Kevin Mitchell is a predator who specifically targets older, wealthy individuals through their adult children. How many others are there? Helen is the only other one I've found so far, but I'm still digging. Men like this rarely stop at 2 victims. I stared at Helen Peterson's photograph, seeing my own story reflected in her kind, weary eyes. Is she willing to talk to me? Already asked her, Frank said. She wants to meet you this afternoon. Says it's time someone finally stopped this bastard for good. 2 hours later, I was sitting in Helen Peterson's immaculate living room, listening to a story that could have been my own. She served me iced tea in delicate china cups, her hands steady despite the tremor beneath her voice. He was so charming at first, Helen said, her gaze distant. He called me Mom. He brought me flowers, helped with the yard work. Sarah was so happy, and I truly thought I'd finally gotten the son I'd always wanted. When did you realize something was wrong? I asked. When my credit card was declined at the grocery store. Just like what happened to you, I imagine. By then, he had opened 5 accounts in my name. 5 accounts I knew nothing about. Helen slid a thick manila folder across the coffee table. It was bulging with documents. Bank statements, credit reports, even recordings of the phone calls I made to the fraud departments. I kept everything. Why didn't you press charges? Her expression hardened. Oh, I tried. But Kevin had convinced Sarah that I was getting senile, that I was just confused about giving him permission to help with my finances. She testified on his behalf, said I'd authorized everything. Without her support, the prosecutor said it was my word against his. He said, she said case. What about Sarah now? Helen's voice broke slightly. She finally saw the truth when he cleaned out her savings account and disappeared. But by then it was too late for us. We haven't spoken in 4 years. He didn't just steal my money, Mr. Harrison. He stole my daughter. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. He's not going to steal mine. Helen's grip tightened on my hand, her eyes locking onto mine with a sudden intensity. Be careful, Bill. When I started fighting back, Kevin got dangerous. He's not just a thief. He's a predator who enjoys destroying families. The money is just a bonus. What do you mean, dangerous? Helen's eyes went cold. He threatened me. He said if I didn't drop it, I might have an accident. An old woman living all alone, who would question a fall down the stairs. The room fell silent except for the ticking of her grandfather clock, a sound that suddenly seemed menacing. He's more dangerous than you think, Bill, she warned. And now that you've cornered him, he's going to fight back. On the following Tuesday evening, I called Emily and asked her to bring Kevin for dinner. My voice was calm, almost friendly. After 4 decades in the engineering business, I had learned that the best time to demolish a faulty structure is when its occupants feel most secure. They arrived at 6:30, Kevin carrying a bottle of expensive Cabernet like a peace offering. Bill, I'm so glad you called, he said, his smile practiced and easy. We really need to clear the air about this whole misunderstanding. Families shouldn't fight over money. You're right, Kevin. Families shouldn't fight over money. I agreed, gesturing toward my dining room table, where I had laid out all of Frank Miller's evidence. Which is why I think you should meet someone. Kevin's smile faltered as he saw the documents spread out like exhibits in a courtroom: bank statements, photographs, credit reports. And right in the center, the portrait of Helen Peterson, staring up at him. Kevin, I'd like you to meet Helen Peterson. Or maybe you remember her as your former mother-in-law. The transformation was instantaneous. Kevin's mask didn't just slip, it shattered. His handsome features twisted into something cold and calculating. You son of a bitch, he whispered. Emily went pale. She had seen flashes of Kevin's temper before, the way he cursed at other drivers, his dismissive treatment of service workers, the coldness he showed to people he considered beneath him. She had always rationalized it away. But now, seeing that darkness directed at her own father, she could no longer pretend. It was Kevin Anderson back then, wasn't it? I continued, my voice level. Different name, same game. $60,000 stolen from an 80-year-old widow, using the exact same methods you used on me. Kevin's hands clenched into fists at his sides. That old woman has been lying about me for years. She told me everything, Kevin. The forged signatures. The manipulated daughter. The threats you made when she fought back. I stood up, moving to stand between him and Emily. She told me what you said about accidents happening to old women who live alone. Dad, what is he talking about? Emily's voice trembled, but this time it was with dawning recognition, not confusion. Kevin spun toward her, his face contorted with a rage she had clearly learned to tiptoe around. Your father hired some washed-up private detective to dig up ancient history. He's trying to frame me for something that happened years before I even met you. Frame you? I pulled out the side-by-side comparisons of the signatures from Helen's fraudulent accounts and my own. These are your signatures, Kevin. Your handwriting. Your pattern. You don't know what you're dealing with, old man. The pretense was gone. This was the real Kevin, the one Emily had only glimpsed in unguarded moments. I know exactly what I'm dealing with, I said firmly. A con artist who targets elderly people through their own children. Kevin took a step toward me, his voice dropping to the menacing whisper Emily had heard him use on others. You think you're so smart, with your big engineering empire, playing the grieving widower. But you're just another Mark, Bill. Another lonely old fool with too much money. Emily stood frozen, the denial she had clung to for 3 years finally shattering into a million pieces. I gave you 3 years of my life, Kevin continued, his voice rising with the familiar, terrifying escalation she had learned to fear. 3 years pretending to care about your boring stories and your dead wife. 3 years playing the perfect son-in-law while you sat on your millions like some damn dragon. Kevin, stop. Emily pleaded, using her practiced, de-escalating tone. Shut up, Emily, he roared. Your father wants to play games? Fine. His eyes, cold and hard as steel, locked on mine. You have no idea what I'm capable of, Bill. Helen Peterson learned. And Sarah learned when she chose her mother over me. Are you threatening me? Kevin's smile was all teeth, a predator's grin that Emily had seen right before he destroyed someone. I'm educating you. You're a 70-year-old man who lives alone. Accidents happen. Heart attacks, falls, gas leaks, especially to old men who stick their noses where they don't belong. Silence filled the room. Emily stared at her husband, no longer able to pretend she didn't know exactly what he was capable of. Get out of my house, I said quietly. I'll leave, he snarled, heading for the door. He turned back, giving me a look that I knew meant someone was going to pay. You'll regret crossing me, old man. The next morning, I reached Denver Police Headquarters before the first pot of coffee finished brewing. Kevin's threats still echoed in my mind, but the fear had been forged into cold, hard determination. 40 years in business had taught me one crucial lesson: when someone declares war, you respond with overwhelming force. Detective Karen Davis listened to my story with the calm patience of someone who had heard it all before. But when I spread Helen Peterson's meticulously kept documents across her desk alongside my own evidence, her expression sharpened. Mr. Harrison, this is a clear and disturbing pattern of elder financial abuse, she said, her professional demeanor now tinged with outrage. With 2 documented victims and identical methods, we have solid grounds for multiple felony charges. How long before you can arrest him? Give me 24 hours to coordinate with the district attorney's office. We'll want a formal statement from Helen Peterson, and I'll need you to come in and do the same. By Thursday afternoon, Kevin Mitchell was in handcuffs, arrested at his office in front of his boss and co-workers. Emily called me from the police station, her voice choked with sobs. Dad, they arrested him. They just walked in and arrested him. They're saying he stole money from you and some other woman. This has to be a mistake. It's not a mistake, honey, I said gently. Come home. We need to talk. When Emily arrived at my house, her face was swollen from crying, but something in her eyes had changed. The blind loyalty was cracking, being replaced by the first glimmers of a painful clarity. The police showed me documents, Dad. Bank statements, credit applications. It looks like his handwriting, but he swears he didn't sign them. What does your heart tell you? I asked. She was quiet for a long time, staring down at her hands. My heart tells me I've been making excuses for him for 3 years. Every time he got angry, every time money disappeared from our joint account, every time he had an explanation that didn't quite make sense, I just ignored it. Her gaze met mine. The bail hearing is on Monday. His lawyer is asking for $80,000. Are you going to pay it? That's not my decision to make, Emily. It's yours. Mine? Why? You're his wife. You're the one who has to decide if you believe he's innocent or guilty. Whether you trust him to show up for his trial, or whether you think he'll disappear just like he did with Helen Peterson's daughter. Emily was quiet for another long moment. Dad, can I ask you something? When Mom was sick, did you ever just think about running away? Just leaving because it was all too hard, too complicated. Every single day. I admitted. But I didn't. Because that's what love means. You stay, and you fight for the people who matter. A single tear rolled down her cheek. When they arrested him, he looked right at me and said, "This is your father's fault. You need to fix it." He didn't say he was innocent. He didn't say he loved me. He just gave me an order. Monday's bail hearing was a formality. Kevin's public defender argued that his client was a respected marketing professional with strong ties to the community. The prosecutor countered with evidence of the previous fraud case in California and labeled him a significant flight risk. The judge set bail at $100,000. Emily didn't pay it. On Tuesday evening, Kevin called me from jail. His voice was different now. The charm was gone, the manipulation stripped away, leaving only cold, raw fury. "You destroyed my life, you old bastard. When I get out of here, you are going to pay for what you've done to my marriage." "Is that a threat, Kevin?" I asked, steady. "It's a promise." I hung up and immediately called Detective Davis. "Kevin Mitchell just threatened me from a jail phone. I have it recorded." On Wednesday morning, Kevin's bail was revoked for witness intimidation. The judge ordered him held without bond pending trial. That afternoon, Emily walked into my kitchen carrying a manila folder and wearing a look of grim determination that I recognized from her mother. "I filed for divorce this morning," she said quietly. "And I called the prosecutor's office. I told them I want to testify against him at his trial." "Are you sure, honey?" "Dad, I spent 3 years married to a stranger. A man who targeted our family, who stole from you, and who threatened your life. I will not spend another day of my life pretending I don't know who he really is." She sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where Kevin had charmed us all with his stories and his smile. "I want to help you get justice. For you, for Helen Peterson, and for whoever else he's hurt." Her voice grew stronger, firmer. "And I want to make sure he never, ever hurts another family again." November in Denver was crisp and clean, the kind of air that reminded me why I built my life here. 8 months had passed since Kevin's arrest, 8 months of depositions, legal briefs, and sleepless nights. Now, sitting in the Denver County Courthouse on a Tuesday morning, I watched my former son-in-law shuffle into the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit and shackles. He looked nothing like the charming man who had once brought expensive wine to my dinner table. 8 months in county jail had stripped away his polish, revealing the hollow-eyed predator underneath. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Eleanor Vance." The courtroom fell silent. Judge Eleanor Vance, stern, 60s, known for tough financial crime sentences, took her seat. "Mr. Mitchell," her voice cut through the silence, "you stand accused of multiple counts of identity theft, elder financial abuse, and fraud. How do you plead?" Kevin's tired-looking public defender stood. "Your Honor, my client wishes to enter a guilty plea to all charges in exchange for the prosecution's recommended sentence." A guilty plea. After 8 months of denial, he was finally admitting it. "Mr. Mitchell," the judge said, "do you understand that by pleading guilty, you are admitting to systematically defrauding elderly victims of over $170,000? "Yes, Your Honor." Kevin's voice was barely a whisper. "And do you understand this plea agreement includes full restitution to your victims and a prison sentence of 4 years? "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Vance turned to the prosecution. "Ms. Reynolds, I understand you have victim impact statements." Assistant District Attorney Reynolds, a sharp woman who had handled our case with relentless precision, stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We have statements from William Harrison and Helen Peterson." Helen walked slowly to the witness stand, her cane tapping against the marble floor. She looked fragile, but her voice was steel. "Your Honor, Kevin Mitchell didn't just steal my money. He stole my relationship with my daughter. He destroyed 5 years of my life and left me afraid to trust anyone. I am here today because I want other families to know that predators like this can, and must, be stopped." When Helen finished, it was Emily's turn. My daughter approached the stand with a quiet determination that made my heart swell with pride. "Your Honor, I was married to Kevin Mitchell for 3 years. I thought I knew him, but I was living with a stranger who was systematically trying to destroy my family. He manipulated me into believing his lies and used me as a tool to access my father's personal information." Her voice grew stronger. "But today, I'm here to say that families can survive this kind of betrayal. My father taught me that love means fighting for what's right, especially when it's hard. Kevin stared at his hands throughout her testimony, never once looking at the woman he had deceived. Judge Vance reviewed the sentencing guidelines. Mr. Mitchell, you are a predator who violated the most sacred trust for personal gain. This court sentences you to 4 years in state prison, followed by 6 years of supervised probation and full restitution of $170,000 to your victims. The gavel fell. Kevin was led away in shackles, without looking back. Outside the courthouse, Emily and I stood in the bright November sunshine. Is it over, Dad? She asked. The legal part is over, I said, putting my arm around her shoulder. Now our part begins. 6 months later, on a warm Sunday in May, I found Emily in my backyard, kneeling beside Claire's rose garden. She'd moved back home after the divorce, and piece by piece, we were rebuilding our family. The white roses are beautiful this year, she said, a peaceful smile on her face. Mom would have loved them. She would have loved seeing you here, taking care of them. Emily sat back on her heels. Dad, I need to tell you something. My therapist says I need to talk about the guilt. What guilt, honey? I brought him into our family. I married him. If I had just been smarter, more careful. Her voice broke. I almost lost you because I was too blind to see what was right in front of me. I knelt beside her in the dirt. Emily, you were a victim too. The fact that you found the courage to stand up to him, to testify against him, that takes more strength than most people will ever know. But how do I trust my own judgment again? By remembering what real love looks like, I said. Real love builds you up. It doesn't tear you down. Helen Peterson called yesterday, she said, a new light in her eyes. She wants me to speak at a support group for families affected by financial abuse. I told her yes. If my story can help just one other family avoid this pain, then maybe some good can come from all of this. Over the next 6 months, we became unlikely advocates. We testified before the state legislature, worked with local banks on fraud detection, and started a support group with Helen. She had become like family, the grandmother Emily never knew and the friend I never expected. As we drove to our monthly support group meeting that afternoon, I watched my daughter share her story with a young couple whose grandfather had been similarly victimized. I felt Claire's presence in that room, and I knew she would have been so proud of the woman our daughter had become. On the drive home, Emily turned to me. Dad, what would you tell someone who's going through what we went through? I'd tell them that protecting your family isn't selfish, it's necessary, I said. I'd tell them that real love doesn't ask you to ignore red flags. And I'd tell them that it's never too late to fight back. Predators count on our fear, our guilt, our desire to keep the peace. But sometimes keeping the peace means going to war. As we pulled into my driveway, Emily turned to me with Claire's smile and her mother's strength. Thank you, Dad, for fighting for us. For showing me what real protection looks like. Thank you for coming home, honey, I replied. For choosing family over fear.